messing around. I got this new energy drink, Bang, that I'm trying out right now. It's called Bang.
They couldn't have thought of a better name than that.
No, I think that they purposely went for a more obscene name to just get people's curiosity.
Well, it's an attention grabber, I'll say that.
Yeah. Do you want to drink some Bang?
I know. I'll have one Bang, please.
Can I have a Bang, please?
Come on.
Do you want it now or do you want it later? I want it now, of course. But yeah. Did you see anything good this week, Andrew?
No. It's that January month where I don't go to the movies.
You don't go to the theaters much, yeah.
No, it's mostly just stuff of me staying at home and not freezing because it's been freezing lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, since the last time we talked, which was a week ago, I haven't seen much.
I mean, we've kind of gotten past seeing some of the movies that were coming out late from the Oscar, stuff. Like we've seen some of them indie films now, and now we're kind of just starting to really begin the new year. And as you said, there's just not a lot that happens at the beginning of the year that.
Also, it's mostly, January is kind of the catch-up month for me. I know now we're, by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be February. We are now 1 month into 2019, which is still shocking to me. But what I did end up catching up on was the documentary 3 Identical Strangers.
Yeah.
Which I know both you and our friend Dan had seen when we did our top 10 show a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, I just didn't watch it in time for that show, and I didn't really pay attention to seek it out or anything like that, but I'm glad I did because it's a hell of a documentary. It's really an eye catcher and has a wow factor to it. And I can see why there's been so much buzz around it all last year and why it got nominated for an Oscar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's really, really good and thought-provoking.
Do you think it would have made your top 10 if you'd have saw it earlier?
Probably not. I don't think it would have been. I mean, I put it on my Letterboxd list, and it's not in my top 10 or top 20. So no, I don't think it wouldn't have changed anything, but it would have made me more part of the conversation when you guys were having it.
Sure.
Other kind of things that have come up this week, I think is interesting for us to talk about very briefly before we get into this spotlight, is that we have talked about physical media and digital media or streaming or whatever, several times. And it's very interesting that this week that one of the kind of major sources of digital versions of movies is shutting down this year.
Yeah.
And that is Ultraviolet.
Yeah.
Which has been around since 2011. And just for people who aren't aware of, basically for years and years and years now, when you buy a movie, a physical copy of a movie, you get a digital version of that movie as well. And sometimes it comes in different versions of that, Ultraviolet, Movies Anywhere, Vudu, you get a Vudu copy. Basically, Ultraviolet was one of the major ones, and it's, shutting down shop in very, very soon. I think
it was supposed to be the end of this month, this past month.
Yeah, it's either the end of February or maybe March. Not quite sure. I think it's February, but either way, it just shows, once again, that kind of major negative aspect of digital versions of media is they can go away. They're not permanent. They're not all long lasting.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't, they give you this option to link your stuff up with movies anywhere.
Yeah,
or everywhere, or whatever it's called.
There's a way to save your backlog.
Yeah,
it just says if you
don't do it by a certain time, you lose it.
You lose it all, and that's that's money. And I know a lot of people who, very many collectors out there collect just the digital version of the movies.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, dude, every time I post a movie on Instagram, somebody's asking me for my digital code.
Yeah, I got those a lot, and I don't get them that much anymore. I kind of just ignore them anyways.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people will buy the physical copies, keep the digital version and then just sell the physical copies and make some money
Well,
back.
that's why I don't do it. I don't give them out, not only because I use it as a backup, but I know they're just going to go make money off of it, and I'm like, screw you. I'm going to keep it. I paid for this thing. You're not going to make money off of it.
Technically, you're giving them a free movie or free
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm not. No, I spend money on it. I ain't giving you a free movie. Screw you. I'm sorry. I pay good money for my movies. I'm not giving away any aspect of what I paid for. I mean, unless I want to do it, unless I, like I'm willing to donate it to people. Like if it's my choice, then it's my choice. But
right.
Most of the time when I see people just come at me and ask me for it, I'm like, no.
No, I usually like if I'm going to give something away, it's going to be to somebody I know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like
not a stranger on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, certain movies I like to have the backup for, but a lot of stuff I'm willing to just give away. If I'm in the mood, if I'm in the giving mood, I will give them away. But usually I don't. So, but yeah, there's that, and with that downfall of that, we kind of got a more concrete announcement about the Criterion Channel,
Yes.
which is coming out April 18th.
Yes.
So that's cool.
April. I don't know the exact date. Steven,
I think it was April 18th. Right. I think it was 18th.
You're probably right. And they're still taking early signups now.
Yeah, which I did already.
To become a charter member, you can basically lock in your subscription price now, which I think is $9.99 a month or $89.99 for a year.
Yeah.
And right away, actually, they have a movie available to screen already.
Yeah, you can do they're going to do one new movie a week.
Yeah. Kind of like a little preview, a little taste of what.
I think this week they had Mikey and Nikki playing.
Yes, yes, they did. The movie by Elaine May, I believe, which recently had a Blu-ray and DVD release come out from Criterion. So we're not quite sure of the scope of their catalog yet in terms of what they're going to be offering. If it's going to be their entire Criterion Collection catalog or most of it, or
I kind of think of what we're gonna. I mean, there's probably a little bit more to it than we know yet, but like, I would assume like if you think about Filmstruck and think about what just the Criterion version is, the Criterion Channel version of Filmstruck was. Right. That's kind of what we're going to get here, and maybe some more surprises, maybe. But
it wasn't. And I know it wasn't the entire collection on.
No.
On Filmstruck, it was a good portion of it, but I'm curious what other deals that they may have possibly made to get other maybe non-Criterion films in there or potential Criterion films in there. Like, will they use it as a testing ground to add films to the collection or something like that?
Yeah.
Another thing that came out through Criterion this week, there was a little behind the scenes leak, if you will, where potentially or probably they're going to announce that Blue Velvet is going to come to the collection. David Lynch's film from the late 80s starring.
And I just bought that damn thing on Blu-ray.
I know. I've had the Blu-ray for years myself. So it's like, double dipping again, but it'll be well worth it.
Luckily it was only like $10 or something like that. Yeah.
I'm assuming, we'll get the usual new transfer, restoration, perhaps new special features and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming all that, but I believe I would have to look it up directly, but basically somebody went there, and it's on Instagram, it's on Criterion Cast, and all these sites that cover Criterion, where someone went there and they screened something and they saw that they were screening Blue Velvet for an upcoming release. And Criterion hadn't announced it yet. I believe they were screening Police Story and Blue Velvet because they're working on Police Story. Starring and directed by Jackie Chan, coming out soon. But Blue Velvet we didn't know about, so that was a nice surprise. Not a big surprise because they've released
a lot of Lynch.
A lot of Lynch. I know they've got Mulholland Drive's been released. Eraserhead's been released.
Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah, Fire Walk with Me has been released, and I know they have the rights to all of his short films, as well as that
It had that. Isn't there one of his a documentary on him
Yeah, I
in
think
there
that
too?
also came out as well.
Yeah.
And then they have, I believe they have the rights to Dumbland as well, which is
Well,
just
the
really
one
weird.
everybody wants is Lost Highways. I've heard a lot of people saying they want Lost Highways.
Yeah, I would want Lost Highway as well because it doesn't even have a Blu-ray release. At least
Yeah.
here in the United States, it doesn't. It may have it in the UK, but not here.
And what's the other
Um,
one? Empire Inland
yeah, Inland Empire,
or Inland Empire? Yeah.
which is his last feature film, doesn't have a Blu-ray release either here. So that would be another big get for David Lynch fans like myself. Yeah, I kind of can't wait for that. Blue Velvet's a weird movie. So I mean, David Lynch's catalog is weird in general, but Blue Velvet, I watched that. That was one of my first Lynch films, or maybe my first Lynch film, and it's like it's a dive into the deep end. You know what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I always tell people, you want to wade into the shallows when you get into a director
It's
or a
kind of hard
filmmaker.
to tell people where to start with Lynch because
Yeah,
it's
like,
just all very,
and you can't start early with him because Eraserhead is unlike anything you've ever seen
yeah,
before. Dune is a movie that's not really Lynchian. That's a movie that was basically he did for the main studios, and then they dictated what the movie
yeah.
would look like and be and whatever. So yeah, that's
You
one of those
just gotta
directors.
pick one.
You just kind of have to dive
I
in.
mean, if you want to pick the two, I think either Eraserhead or Mulholland Drive are kind of the ones that people say you need to see them. So if you're going to pick two really good ones, them are the two. But
Yeah.
I mean, like we said, it's hard to pick one because they're all weird. They're all going to test you.
Yeah, I like Wild at Heart.
Yeah, yeah,
The movie he was working on, like while Twin Peaks was out. To be honest, I would say watch Twin Peaks if you want to like ease your way into it because it's long form David Lynch, which is a
yeah.
little more digestible than him, throwing
Throwing it all
everything
at you
at
in
you.
2 hours. Yeah. But all right. Well, we had a little casual
Yeah.
discussion about some Criterion stuff there and some Lynch there at the beginning. But we're going to get into our main focus
Yes.
here on this episode of the Cinema Discovery Project. And if you don't know us, if you're meeting us for the first time, I'm Stephen Billings, and with me is Andrew Cabral.
Yes.
And this week this is I think our fourth spotlight. And what we do on these spotlights is we do break down the movie and we go into spoiler territory. So if you have not seen this movie, please go and find the movie. And this is a very easy movie to find, especially right now because this film's director has just had a recent release. M. Night Shyamalan had Glass come out, which was a sequel to Unbreakable, Split. And now we're going to talk about his quote unquote, it's not technically his first movie, but it's the movie that broke him out.
Yes.
And kind of made him an overnight success. And that is The Sixth Sense, starring Bruce Willis, Haley Joel Osment, and Toni Collette.
Yes.
And yeah, young Toni Collette.
Yeah, she was about 27
yeah, I mean,
when this movie was out.
Yeah, and what's weird
she's fantastic in it.
Yeah, and what's weird is out of all the movies we've seen her in over years, this is the only one she's been nominated for. She was nominated for supporting actress, and she's never been nominated for anything else.
Yeah, a lot of people thought she would have been nominated for Hereditary this year, but that just didn't happen.
She's been in Little Miss Sunshine. I mean, she's had a few movies like The Way Back. She's really good. Like, there's a few movies she's really good in that she's for some reason they don't nominate her. I don't know why. I guess they're just giving them all out to Meryl Streep, so they don't have no room for anybody else. But
yeah, she's a Golden Globe winner though, because of the TV series that she was in called United States of Tara from 2009, I believe.
Yeah,
she's had success there, and then Emmy awards and stuff like that. But yeah, this film is very much the breakout film for M. Night Shyamalan, who is very well known now for both positive and negative reasons. Negative reasons more so being with the quality of his films have gone up and down throughout his career, which happens to a lot of directors, most of the directors that we talk about and idolize and stuff like that. Not everybody has, a complete clean sheet.
Well, sure. I think what it is that his downfall was so quick that it was like kind of shocking for people. And of course, in the internet age, it's even more amplified. Back in the day when somebody made a bad movie, you didn't really hear people talking about it because people did. You mean, you didn't talk to everybody. You just amongst friends would talk about things. But now in this age, when somebody's hating on somebody, they'll go online, they'll spread it to that person, they'll spread the hate, and it got really bad after The Village. Like right around The Village is when it started to really get bad.
That's when you get a big dip in his filmography.
It's because he has a very he even though when he first started making movies, it seemed like he was bringing you something new and different and original. He was really borrowing from a lot of his favorite filmmakers, and then he would continue to use the same kind of storytelling method in every movie, which is to have some big twist or reveal in the third act.
Right.
And that's where him relying on that crutch kind of, I think, eventually turned people off.
Oh yeah, and then like we said, each movie is, separate and different and different qualities based on premise and script and all that stuff. But yeah, he has a very short filmography, about 16 credits or so, 2 of which, one is in pre-production, the other one has been announced. So really only 14 directing credits in his career, one being also a TV series that he
which is more than somebody like James Cameron has, though.
Very true. And what is interesting is we say that he has had that kind of dip in quality in his career, but it didn't affect his ability to keep putting out movies or getting work. Sometimes some directors and some filmmakers make a really bad movie and you never hear from them again.
Well, the thing is, fortunately for him, some of his bad movies still made money. Like The Last Airbender, even though it was a terrible movie, made money still. It made enough money to warrant, his name, even though it can be associated with bad, I think there's still a somewhat loyal fan base of him.
Oh, yeah,
I think there is a lot of people that really like him. And I think if anything, I think he's a more interesting director than he is a writer.
Okay, that makes sense. And also,
I think he's a good visual storyteller.
Yeah, we're not just I want to make it clear that we're just kind of basing our analysis or our discussion on just a general sense of the way people view some of his movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not everybody.
Me personally,
everybody thinks.
I probably like more of his movies than most people do. Right. Honestly,
like not everybody thinks Lady in the Water is bad. Not everybody thinks.
Sure.
I mean, some people don't think The Happening's terrible. You know what I mean? So it's all based on your perspective, but we're just going with a general consensus, for discussion purposes. Just kind of an overview of his the flows of his career.
And one tidbit about him, if you notice, all of his movies take place in Philadelphia.
They do.
He's from there, so that's why he really kind of makes it a thing. And he's technically, he's an American director, but his heritage is from India. So he's apparently his parents wanted him to be a doctor, wanted him to be something like that. But then he was like, I'm going to go to film school. And they were like, oh.
And what is interesting is you don't see many, directors from India working in mainstream Hollywood movies these days. No. So he's very much part of a different mold and part of introducing some diversity into a very white Hollywood standard that
definitely,
we've all come to know.
But his influence is definitely, I would say his strongest influence is classic Hollywood, like Hitchcock.
Yeah, it's Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah,
100%. I've watched so much Hitchcock and delved into so much Hitchcock that I can tell you that M. Night Shyamalan takes a lot from it.
He wants to be Hitchcock, yeah.
And I mean, so much so that I think I've mentioned it on here before, or maybe mentioned it on some other thing somewhere, is that in the special features for Dial M for Murder, the Blu-ray of Dial M for Murder, Hitchcock's film, he's in it talking about the movie.
Oh, really? I didn't know that, yeah.
It's obvious that, takes an influence from that. Hitchcock was known for making psychological thrillers similar to M. Night Shyamalan, having third act twists similar to M. Night Shyamalan. I mean, and granted, everyone takes from everyone when it comes to filmmaking and movie making in general. There's very few brand new, spanking new filming techniques and things that are really truly original nowadays. Everything's been done essentially. It's all about kind of you taking it and making it your own and utilizing it in your own specific way and stuff like that. And M. Night Shyamalan definitely does that. The Sixth Sense is a very fascinating movie to rewatch and to kind of look at just for filmmaking and storytelling techniques and things like that. I hadn't seen the movie in quite some time. It'd been about, I want to say 10 years or so
What?
since I've seen it because
Wow.
I bought the DVD back when I started collecting around 2008 or so. So I probably bought it around then, and that's when I probably watched it last.
Wow, I watched this movie a lot when I was a kid. This came out when I was about 10 years old. And after it came out, I mean, when this came out, it was a phenomenon.
Yes,
This movie was made for $40 million and it made like 672 million
like worldwide. Yeah.
worldwide.
What is
That's an enormous amount for that time.
what is kind of crazy about that is that originally it was a Walt Disney
Oh
Studio
yeah.
production,
Yeah.
and the guy, some executive who was working there, like bought the script from M. Night Shyamalan
Well,
and agreed for him to direct it for like $3 million, and
yeah.
then he didn't check with anybody at Disney. He just did it, and then the guy ended up like getting fired essentially and moving on to something else. So Disney was like, "We'll just sell this to
Well, yes,
somebody else."
they had a couple big producers on this movie. Kathleen Kennedy and Frank
Yes,
Marshall were
yeah,
producers.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
But it was sold to the production rights was sold to Spyglass Entertainment,
Yeah.
but Disney still had distribution rights.
Yeah.
So that's why if you see the DVD or the Blu-ray, it's put out by Disney, Buena Vista, their
Yeah.
like subsidiary or
Yeah, this was
whatever.
a time when Disney was kind of still in the game of putting out, more adult content.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that was around the time when they still had Miramax in
yeah,
their
probably still
fold
had
at that point.
Miramax. Um, yeah, I mean, up until we got into about the mid 2000s, late 2000s, they were still making kind of adult content. And now it's like completely gone. Like they don't
Yeah,
do it anymore.
and it
Yeah.
was through the Disney Buena Vista
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, bridge of their production department that's where a lot of their more adult films. By adult films, we mean like R rated
Just
and
yeah.
PG 13.
And,
Not
and
animated.
and watching this movie, man, if I'm not mistaken, this movie is PG-13, The Sixth Sense. And there's a lot of I feel like they got a lot away with a lot in this movie for
What
PG-13.
what is interesting is I feel like it actually um it's appropriate. Like I think PG-13 fits it. There's no there's no swearing, there's no nudity.
Well, I'm just
There's
saying,
only like one or two shots of gore in the film,
I
and
think
they're
there's just
quick.
a lot of suggestiveness
Oh
that
yeah.
I'm surprised
Yeah.
that it didn't get a more get a R rating, because it's got you see basically you see a guy kill himself. I mean, you don't see it, but
Th-
it's suggested
That's the one
that he
yeah.
blows his head off.
If you don't show
Um,
it, you can get away with it.
and there's things of child abuse, and
Oh,
there's
for
things of
sure. Yeah, the themes in this film are I mean, this film is has a lot to unpack with
and
it.
the imagery is pretty rough. Like a woman cuts her wrists, and you see it. Like
Well,
you
you
see
see
her
yeah,
wrists cut.
you see like you see the cuts.
Just stuff like that.
They're not
Like,
oozing blood or anything or
well, I mean,
anything like
they
that.
are. There's a few scenes of blood. I mean,
Well,
there's
yeah, we'll get into it when we
yeah,
get
yeah. I mean,
yeah. So
but
let's dive into it then if we're gonna
yeah,
talk.
yeah. I mean, and I guess, but one more character we should talk about Bruce
Right.
Willis. Bruce Willis at this time
Oh my
was
goodness.
still pretty prominent. I mean, he had done, I think, the third Die Hard movie a few years before. That was probably I mean, he was doing some more lower level stuff. Like he did like what's the one he did with Mercury Rising? I
Let me
think he
look.
did right near in that time.
Let's see. Oh, I mean, Fifth Element was 2 years
Fifth Element,
before.
yeah.
Armageddon was a year
Oh, that was
before.
the big one. That's the big one right there. That
That is
came
the
out.
big
Yeah,
one.
that was the big movie.
And
Yeah.
then like a year later, he did the whole 9 yards. And
Oh man,
I'll
the
say this
comedy.
though,
Yeah.
and then of course the next year he would reteam with M. Night Shyamalan and do Unbreakable.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is interesting about this film, the biggest surprise for me, is you forget how talented and how great of an actor Bruce Willis
When he
is.
wants to be. Yeah.
And I'm watching and I'm like, this is a completely different actor than we see from Bruce Willis now.
Yeah.
Like he's he's giving looks and just body language and all this kind of stuff that's meaningful and really artistic in
Yeah.
acting expression and ability, and I'm like, where is this Bruce Willis now? Where have
Yeah,
you gone, Bruce Willis?
he's obviously kind of given up. He didn't care anymore.
Like, it's not even close to what he's doing now. It's like
Yeah, it's
night
a
and
very
day.
subtle, nuanced performance in this movie.
Yeah, and it was just refreshing to see that after seeing so many, recent Bruce Willis performances that aren't like it at all.
Yeah,
But getting into it right away, speaking of Bruce Willis, as he starts off the film, and we start off, of course, in Philadelphia, and Bruce Willis plays a child psychologist known as Malcolm Crowe, and he has just received some big prestigious award for his ability as a doctor, for his
yeah,
profession and all that kind of stuff. And he and his wife are essentially celebrating at their home, and his wife is portrayed by a great character actress, Olivia Williams, who's really really great. I've always really liked her. um she's in that Wes Anderson film, um the one that actually came out right around the same time. And I was gonna say the one with
Royal Tenenbaums or
no, before that, the one with
Bottle Rocket.
but after Bottle Rocket.
Oh, Rushmore.
She's in Rushmore. She
Okay,
plays the teacher who the young character has a crush
gotcha.
on in
Yeah, I
that
remember her
movie.
now.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say the Wes Anderson film with Bill Murray, but he's kind of in all of them,
Well,
so that wouldn't have been
then
distinctive.
you could have been like, oh, the one with Jason Schwartzman.
Yeah, the
No,
Jason Schwartzman.
he's been
Uh,
in a couple of them too.
I guess he has. Yeah, the one with the
Damn it, I
Luke.
can't think of the one. No.
Yeah, the one with Luke Wilson. I was like,
Oh man, nah, he's.
yeah. So anywho, so they're celebrating at their home, and they they do they hear a noise, or do
Well,
they go up to their
they're
bedroom?
celebrating. They're and there's a particular moment in the scene
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting that it's kind of an important scene. It kind of sets up their relationship a little bit.
yeah,
He was very consumed with this work that he's been doing, and that even she even says like, you even put me second. The job came first. That kind of sets up the rest of the movie
yeah.
because
That sets up a heavy theme for the Bruce Willis
it
character.
plants the idea that their relationship has been strained, but they're having a good time now, and things have settled down a little bit in this moment, and they're going upstairs and they're about to, of course, have fun, have sex, whatever they're going to
Yeah,
do.
get it
And then they
on.
notice that the window's been broken,
Yes,
and then you get a shadow walks by, and then you look into the bathroom and you see Donnie Wahlberg naked,
yes.
almost,
Very,
or just in his underwear.
yeah, very skinny, malnourished Donnie Wahlberg
Yeah,
in a bit of distress. What we learn in that scene is that he is a former patient of Bruce Willis's character of Malcolm, and he is a failed patient. He is someone who Bruce Willis's character did not help for all of the. It's a kind of very interesting contrasting view of the Bruce Willis character, because we just saw that he got this prestigious award
yeah,
for his work in child psychology, and here is literally one of his failed cases. And what happens is he the Donnie Wahlberg character whose name is Gray, Vincent Gray, I
yeah.
believe is his name,
That's it.
and he shoots Bruce Willis. He shoots Malcolm, and he falls down on the bed, and we get a bird's eye view. M. Night Shyamalan loves his bird's eye view angles, especially in this
Mm.
movie and throughout his career. But we see a bird's eye view angle, and his wife rushes over to him, and then it fades. It fades away.
Yeah,
And
I
we
mean,
get
and then as after he shoots him, then he shoots
yeah, he
himself.
shoots himself.
Yeah, and
We don't
then
see it, but we hear
yeah,
the gunshot.
yeah,
We see him put the gun up to his head, and then
and then
camera
it kind
pans.
of it pans to the left, and you don't see it happen, but you know what happened, obviously.
Right, and then
And
there's a dissolve to
yeah, till
the next fall,
the next
what-
fall, as it says, and
which I'm guessing is a year later, or
I would
something like that.
assume,
I'm
yeah,
assuming it's a year later.
yeah,
And we see this young boy leaving his home, and of course it's the Haley Joel Osment character, and his name is Cole Sear. Very interesting name. Um, and he's running down the street, but he's being observed by Bruce Willis. And we see that the boy's in kind of a bit of like distress, if you will. He's looks like he's scared and he's running from something.
yeah,
At least that's our perception.
yeah,
And we're kind of going into this. I mean, we already know the twists and turns, but it's interesting if you view this film from both as a first time viewer and as someone who knows the twists. They're very it's a very interesting perspective where we can see like where the mystery is. You know what I mean? We don't.
Yeah.
There, one thing that's great about this movie, right from this opening scene, is that M. Night kind of holds all the cards away from us. He doesn't tell us a lot. He lets the film kind of, you know, reveal itself naturally along the way.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no, you know, of course, there's kind of an expositional scene later on, but it's never too revealing.
Yeah, I mean, he's like I said at the beginning. I think he's a very good visual storyteller. He doesn't. He's not spoon feeding the audience. He's making you go along with the story. He's not. I think he does give a lot of respect to the audience. That's what I admire about a lot of his storytelling ability, is that he doesn't look at us as dumb. He gives us a chance to have to figure it out ourselves. And what you notice as Bruce Willis is observing him, he's also looking at his notebook, and you get
Yes.
this idea right off the bat that the things that the patient that he didn't help at the beginning that shot him, this kid has the very same symptoms of that guy who he couldn't help. So he's now looking at this kid as a way to maybe redeem himself.
Well, he literally does come right out and say that
Later in the film, yeah.
later in the film, in a few scenes later. But he follows Cole to a church, and in the church, you see Cole, hiding in a pew, uh, essentially playing with these figurines that he has, and they have a conversation, and it's kind of it's their first meeting, their first conversation, and Bruce Willis kind of is telling him about, back in the olden days, back in the Middle Ages, people would hide out in churches for protection, for safety reasons.
Yeah.
They would seek sanctuary there, and in a way, as we learn throughout the movies, that this kid is literally is running away from dangers, trying to find sanctuary somewhere.
Yeah, and like we said, on a second watch, a third watch, you start to know everything seems so obvious.
Yes.
When you watch it again after you know what the end of the movie is, and everything seems very obvious, but it doesn't make it any less interesting to see how many clues there are, and then all the payoff that happens at the end is good. I mean, it's not I think people a lot of times think of it as a bad thing, but I think it's great storytelling that he set up all this stuff. And there's smaller things that he sets up too that we'll talk about later that he pays off later.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, in this scene, just by adding that religious element, it shows that he's very desperate. He's going to religion. He's going to a higher power to try to find a way to be saved from whatever it is he's running from, whatever it is. We don't know what it is yet, but he's hiding out in a church. He's talking Latin for some reason. Some kid knows Latin.
Very interesting. Very interesting. He's speaking Latin.
And Bruce Willis, and I think a scene or two later, finds out what it means that he was saying, and apparently it meant like something like, "Oh Lord, I cry to you from the depths," or something like that.
Oh yeah. It's like the next scene actually.
Yeah, he's like he goes home and goes to his basement and is doing some research, and he finds out what the kid says and what it means and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is interesting is their last word, like the last thing Haley Joel Osment's character says to him is, "The next time I see you, I won't be scared." Which is, talk about setup and payoff, literally that first scene will get paid off later on, when we find out the identity of the Bruce Willis character. So he does go home, and like Steven said, he's doing research in his bed. Then he goes up and he sees his wife who's lying in bed, and it's very interesting, kind of, watching it. You're unaware of Bruce Willis's character, but yet again, rewatching it, everything falls into line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The way he interacts with her, or lack thereof, it's very, very interesting.
It's very obviously disconnective. Whatever, as a first time viewer, you look at it as maybe the thing that happened to him where he got shot somehow drove a further wedge between him and his wife, and they're having more issues. Maybe that the reason he's been that experience where he failed a patient has made him obsessed with finding a way to redeem himself, which has drove a wedge between him and his wife. And that's what you kind of maybe fill up in your head, and that's what the director wants you to think has happened. But
Right.
really, it's not that. It's something else that of course, we'll get into later.
Yes. Yeah, we will.
But I think I think they did a great job of finding a way to work around all them things, like so that when you go back and watch it, you don't be like, well, what if? How does that make sense? Like they made it make sense. Like it. I don't really think there's a hole there, me personally, but because I've seen it many times, and I think that it
Right.
all logically can make sense within the world that they created.
Right. All the puzzle pieces do fit together quite nicely in the film. But the next scene after that is we get to see um Cole's home life for the first time. We get to see his mother, portrayed by Toni Collette, which we've mentioned. The next scene is him getting ready for school, basically. She
And
her, the,
yeah,
we see that he comes from a single family home. His mother is, works. We learn that she works two jobs, and she's under a lot of stress. You would think you get that
well, yeah,
image,
you get the
that
vibe that
feeling.
she's very much, always kind of working herself to death and having, is always kind of stressed. And in this scene, you get your first kind of glimpse of something happening that we don't really know what's happening yet.
Right. Yeah.
Where, you kind of get this first person point of view where she's, cleaning up stuff, trying to help him get ready for school. She leaves the room to go to get the laundry, and then when she comes back, all the drawers are open.
Yeah, he's sitting at the kitchen table eating his soggy Cocoa Puffs, and
Yeah,
then she comes back and all the cabinets are open, all the drawers are open, things are
and she, of
disarrayed.
course, assumes it's him.
So she asks him,
Like, were you looking for
what were
something?
you looking for something? He goes, Pop Tarts. And it's like, oh, she goes, they're right here. And he goes, oh, you know what I mean?
And
It's
and the thing that keeps getting, it happens a few times in the movie where he'll ask her, are you thinking something about me? Are
do you hate me? Do
do
you
you, yeah,
you
and
think I'm a
that's
freak?
and that really is kind of the theme of the movie. The movie, to me, what I gather from listening to some of the special features, is that the movie's about communication. It's about how we communicate with our family, how we communicate with our loved ones, and in this case, the mother and the son are not telling, he's not telling his mother what's bothering him, and it's causing even more stress because he doesn't want to cause her stress about what
Yeah.
his problem is. He keeps it in to protect her,
Yeah,
even
you
though
see
he can
that
tell.
that
No,
happens recurrently throughout the movie where he's very self-aware of his situation.
yeah,
Almost too self-aware, um, to the point where he understands the impact it has on others around him.
yeah,
Where he tries to kind of, hold everything in because he knows that if he says certain things, it'll be weird or people will react to it in negative ways, which we see in this movie a
yeah.
lot. It's really really interesting how he kind of goes back and forth in that regard.
And the way M. Night Shyamalan talks about it is he doesn't want Cole to come off as somebody that's necessarily like afraid all the time. I mean, he is, but like it's more that he's fighting. He's trying to survive more than he is just crying and being afraid like a little kid. He's trying to find a way to figure out how to deal with this problem. And when Bruce Willis's character comes along, he's kind of finally maybe found a way so he at least has eventually find somebody he can at least tell his secret to, which I think unlocks him on his way to, of course, dealing with his problem.
Right.
But yeah,
So
in this situation, this particular scene, yeah, I mean, it's sets up very much the relationship between the mother and son that, there's this perpetual sense of stress that happens where she's dealing with trying to take care of the family on her own. And, she's got this son that's kind of troubled and she doesn't know what to do about it because she doesn't know what's wrong with him. And and is just trying her best to survive. And yeah, I mean, even to the point where she sets her kid up with some punk kid that's in it, you know, a little asshole, and you know, that's some rich kid asshole that is really just a bully.
Yeah, the kid is like a little like he was in like a
He's
commercial.
in commercials and shit. You know, he's like talks about how he's an actor. He's like, that's called improv.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, what? Shut up, kid.
Shut up.
He's a good asshole though. I like that. He's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So the next scene I think I want to talk about is the one where Cole returns home from school, and we get our second interaction with him and Malcolm. And he returns home, and Malcolm and his mother are sitting there,
Yeah, they're
seemingly
sitting
waiting
across
for
from each
him.
other, and you kind of assume that they maybe just gotten done with a conversation,
Right.
and that this was like an appointment, because the first time Malcolm's supposed to meet with him, he says he misses his meet. He was supposed to meet with him already, but he missed it.
Right.
But we're like, wait, you were sitting there waiting for him to leave, so you didn't miss it. You just were wanted to see him in his environment.
Right.
But now he's apparently meeting for the first time in person with the mother's permission, we assume, because, you know, they're sitting across from each other.
Yeah, she's
and,
there.
Yeah. And she even, after she interacts with her son, it has this little sweet scene where they talk about their fantasies for the day, even though they both had bad days. They both talked about their fantasy, which is, she said she won the lottery and went and ate this pie in the park and stuff. And he says that he had this fantasy where he you know, won the big game playing kickball, and they picked him up and tossed him in the air, and, you know, everybody loved him. And that's a nice, sweet scene. And then as she leaves, it kind of looks like she says, like, you know, breakfast will be ready in an hour. And that's supposed to indicate maybe she's saying, hey, you have an hour to talk with my kid. But and she kind of gives this look towards Bruce Willis, but not really. So it's like kind of subtle, and it's very good. Very, very subtle things like that.
What's brilliant about that, you know, the small things in retrospect of this scene and specifically, is what we're saying is like, is the assumption that M. Night Shyamalan made is the things that we're pointing out. Like, we assume that they were talking with one another, that this is a scheduled appointment.
I guess we should,
you know what I mean?
I guess what we should do, honestly, is we should just say, hey, look, if the ending of this movie makes this more of an interesting discussion. We find at the end of this movie that Bruce Willis has been dead the whole time. He's a ghost. Right.
But what is interesting is if you think about it, when us not knowing that, it's literally M. Night Shyamalan knowing that we don't know that. Therefore, he has to play the game of setting things up to make it look as convincingly real as possible.
Yeah, it's got to be plausible that
like he has to assume that when someone views the situation like this, that these are the things they're going to think, is that, one, you know, they just finished talking to one another. This is a scheduled appointment. The mother like set up this appointment. You know what I mean? Like, all of those things.
He had to create enough moments to make us not assume that could be a possibility.
Yeah, you had to create this false narrative, basically.
He couldn't have literal conversations between the characters, but he needed to make us fill in the blanks, assuming they did. Yeah.
Which is
I think a great job of that.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant.
There's a scene a little bit later that is even better than this scene, I think, in doing it, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah. So they have, so getting back to the scene, they have an interaction with one another where Bruce Willis says, I want to, read your mind, and if I'm able to guess something right, you take one step closer to sit in this chair. If I say something wrong, you take one step closer to the door, and the end result will be you'll sit and talk with me, or you'll go away, and this meeting will be over.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, this back and forth with one another, because this is before the revelation of that the kid sees dead people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just Malcolm making certain assumptions based on his, profession and education, and he gets some things right and he gets some things wrong. And it's very, very interesting.
I think once he starts assuming, when it's like the first few things he noticed about him are things that are all about his emotions, and like, then when it starts talking about his father, then it's like it switches. Like it's like there's like a he starts assuming things about his relationship with his father or things that happen with his father, and it like totally changes. Like, and then he says something about like how he is, and it's how he acts with other people when he starts assuming how he acts with other people or how he acted towards his father, and that's when it switched. Like where he's like, no, it's not. It's, I found that watching a drawer. I'm not good with other people. I'm a freak.
Yeah,
I
I
drew a
love.
picture
Yeah,
of somebody getting stabbed in the neck with a screwdriver. Like
and then Malcolm's like, "Is this something you saw on TV or what?" Something
yeah,
like that. And he goes, and then Cole says, "Yeah, everybody got upset. Uh, they had a meeting. His mom started crying. I don't draw like that anymore."
I draw
And
rainbows
and
and
it's like because nobody, yeah, I draw people with smiles, dogs running, rainbows. They don't have meetings about rainbows, and it's very interesting.
yeah, when the questions were directed directly at him about his like issues, like when he's like, "You have a secret and you want to tell me, but like it's when he was hinting at what his secret was, like that he had a secret. That's when he was stepping forward. But then when he
Right.
started going outside the box and talking about other people around him, he was like, no."
What is interesting I find about that dialogue is like it goes into the way in which adults view children, the way in which adults treat children, the way they react to their actions of children
Yeah,
and the effects it has on those children. Because we see here that there's something clearly wrong. Like there's something wrong with, this kid shouldn't be drawing people being stabbed in the neck with
yeah,
screwdrivers. But the way in which the adults reacted to it was to be upset about it, to his mother started crying about it, having a special meeting about it, all this kind of stuff. And the way it affected his character is like, okay, I'm just gonna pretend like I don't have these images in my head, like I don't see these things. I'm just gonna draw smiling people, dogs running, sunshine and
as
rainbows.
we said earlier, you
You know what I
said
mean?
earlier,
It's
he's
he's
self-aware.
yeah, he's self-aware and he's burying all of his problems.
Yeah.
And I think M. Night Shyamalan, I don't want to, assume what he's saying, but I'm just going to take a guess here is that he's kind of saying people bury their problems in general.
Well,
People
people
do
that
that.
end up having very deep emotional problems later in life, it's because they don't get the
Bury,
help they need
yeah,
when they need
they
it.
bury those problems, or else they try to get the help, and the way in which people react to it scares them so much that they
Yeah,
end up retreating even further into themselves,
yeah,
making the problem that much worse.
yeah. So yeah, he ends up leaving the room at the end of the scene,
Yes.
and from there, don't we get a? Doesn't he try to make it to a dinner? Right? Isn't that the next scene with his wife? He's late for a dinner with his wife. Is that the next
Yes.
scene?
Well, I think he makes certain. Yeah, yes, he does.
Yeah, so and this was the other scene I was talking about where he shows up at the restaurant. He's apparently late to this dinner, and his wife's just not talking to him across from him, and he assumes she's just mad. And then at the end, she says "Happy Anniversary" and leaves. So she it's like she spoke to him and she's mad at him, but really she's having this like sad dinner alone saying happy anniversary to her lost husband, and
Well,
it works so well because her being silent and her him thinking she's angry, that wanting the audience to think that she's angry at him works so well together. She's actually grieving, but and we're supposed to think she's angry, and I think that that's an interesting parallel of emotions with what our main character or what Cole's having to deal with when it comes to dealing with dead people.
yes.
He thinks that these ghosts are angry with him when actually they're grieving and they need somebody to help them. Um, there's some interesting parallels there.
Very much are. And it's
Yeah,
a very interesting scene in general just because of the dialogue that's there. He comes in, he says, like, I thought you meant the other Italian restaurant I asked you to
yeah,
marry me
yeah,
in. You
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? He says something like that. So you get the feeling that, this is like they were supposed to meet for dinner,
yeah, yeah,
creating
yeah.
that false narrative again. But what is interesting is he goes into other dialogue talking about um interesting things.
And what
Uh
he does really well as a director too is a way to also don't let our minds wander into dissecting what's actually going on too much, is that he keeps the camera away from people's faces that are interacting with him. He doesn't let you see their faces to like necessarily when when he's talking with him, like it'll pan around behind the wife,
Right.
and you can't see that she's actually looking at him, and she's looking down. She's not really communicating with him because she doesn't see him. He's not there.
And what is interesting, what he talks about is he talks about the case, Cole. He says, this is our kind of first time, maybe not our first time, but where he's referring to the other
to the
correct.
incident at the beginning of the movie. Yeah.
Right, where he says, the mannerisms are similar. They seem to have something hanging over them. They have cuts on, cuts on them. Maybe it's physical abuse by teacher, neighbors, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that's when I think the waiter comes over and gives her the check, and then she says happy anniversary, and then she leaves, and we assume that she's just disgusted. She's upset with him talking about work and not other things.
Not even saying, "Hey, happy anniversary." Yeah, not even knowing, obviously, because once again, it's that like I said, the beginning thing where she talked about how she was kind of put second by the work, kind of comes back here and supports this particular scene, and of course with what happened in that moment where he's late for the dinner, it all kind of supports it. And I think that shows how good the writing is in this, because this movie did get nominated for Best Original Screenplay also.
Yeah,
it got six nominations. So it is a tight script, I think. So
yeah, it's a very tight script. The movie is very tight in general.
Hour 43 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it clocks in around that. Yeah. So it moves very, very quickly. So there's no fat.
It's not really a wasted scene. There's not a wasted
scene. There's no wasted scene. Every scene develops the mystery further. Every scene pushes the plot further, and it's very, very interesting.
So where we go from here? We go. I'm not really.
Yeah, talk about trying to keep track of this movie. There is a next scene with Cole and Malcolm talking on, I believe, like the front.
Are they on the way? Are they on the way to school? He's like walking them to school, I think. Is that what the scene is?
I think it is, yes.
Yeah. And he says that he's a freak, and then he gets like upset at him and says, "Don't let anybody tell you that. It's bullshit." and then there's a nice little thing where he's a little comical moment where he's like, "You said the S word." It's like, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes, he does. The S word. Yeah, it's very. I'm looking at the script now. That's why I'm delayed.
Yeah, and so I think right after that, do we get the scene where he's in class and the stuttering Stanley scene? Is that what we get next?
We should talk about that scene. That's very, very interesting. It's interesting because, it's clearly an elementary school level, history class or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the teacher's just, playing along with him and whatnot. And he's like, what was the capital of the United States from 1790 to 1800? And he's like, I'll give you a hint. Yeah, you live here.
Yeah.
And all kids like Philadelphia. And then he asked, what was this building what did this building used to be, basically? And the kid goes, and then of course Cole goes, "Oh, they used to kill people here," which is not something you typically hear from a 9-year-old boy. And the kid's just like, "Oh, where did you hear that?" And then he goes into this, very serious, creepy monologue from, other people's perspectives. And it's like, yeah, they used to bring people here and they used to hang them.
Yeah.
And he just like, that's I don't think so. I don't think that's true or whatever. And then, of course, Cole he's going down this, disturbing thought train. And he says, when you were younger, you used to stutter and people would make fun of you. They would call you Stuttering Stanley. And he was like, and then he's like, where'd you hear that from? And then the kid just keeps yelling Stuttering Stanley to the point where the teacher starts stuttering again. And then the teacher, yells at him,
calls him a freak.
Which is not really what you're supposed to do as a teacher. You're supposed to, I guess, remain as calm as possible. And
Yeah,
and that just
after that
doesn't happen.
he gets sent to the principal. I guess he
Yes,
gets sent out of the classroom, and then Bruce Willis comes to him
at the
at the
school.
school and sits down with him. And this is a scene where he shows him a magic trick, which is funny
Yeah, with the penny.
because then the kid uses it later, where he puts the penny in one hand and says, "Hey, I shake my hand, and now it's in this pocket," even though he doesn't show it to him in his pocket. And then he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna shake again, and here it is back in the hand." I'm like, "What kind of trick is that?" Because even the kid's like, "That's stupid." He's like, "That's I didn't know you were a comedian. You know, that's funny because that wasn't a trick." you know, but yeah, I mean, he, just kind of has a moment with him there and tries to bring him down after all that craziness that happened. And yeah, I mean,
It's yeah, he tries to interact with him on a kid level. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
By showing him magic. And of course, Cole is not amazed by it. He's like, "This
Thing
is
is
stupid.
as we
This
said
is
before,
stupid. You never
he's
took the penny out
obviously
of your
he's a
hand."
lot more mature than most kids.
Yeah, he's a
uh
lot more
you
intelligent.
can't he's trying, like you say, he's trying to get on his level, but he really, this kid doesn't need somebody, doesn't need another friend, doesn't need a friend like that. Like, he needs somebody to help him with this really abnormal problem that he can't tell anybody. It's like, dude, stop trying to show me magic tricks. I need you to help me with these dead people, but I can't tell you, I'm not going to tell you yet because I don't really trust you yet. um
Right.
yeah.
I'm looking. It's
And then I
it
think,
is that
yeah.
doesn't the birthday scene happen right after
Well,
that?
it's somewhere. I don't know if it's right after, but I know we get. I think do we get the scene? Well, we get like a scene where Bruce Willis is back and he's working in his basement, and then he hears somebody come to the door, and his wife comes to the door. He's like, "Are you going to get that?" And finally the wife empties the door, and there's some guy that he doesn't know, I guess, that works with his wife that is trying to get his wife to go out with him.
Yeah,
And she turns him down, and he's like, "Yeah, get the hell out of here, cheese dick," I think is what he calls him.
which is
That's a
which,
very Bruce Willis moment,
that's
cheese
an
dick.
insult I have not heard before.
I mean, it's a '90s. It's definitely a '90s
Oh, it's such a 90s
insult.
thing.
So yeah, you get this kind of little nudge that it's another subtle hint that Bruce Willis isn't really there, and that there's men going after his wife. But then I think right after that, yeah, I think we get the birthday party, which is the birthday for one of these snobby rich kids. And it starts off where Cole is showing this magic trick that he just learned, and the kid, of course, isn't amused by it, and he
Oh,
just
no,
wants his
not at
penny
all.
back. He wants his penny back. And and the thing is also, like, you see Cole, he's sitting at the bottom of the steps of this spiral staircase, and you get a glimpse, you see him watching his mom, like he's watching out for her, kind of. And you overhear her conversation with the other moms, and you could tell how out of her element she is, where she's very much awkward around these people. She probably feels out of place, just like he feels out of place. But she's trying to do this for him. She thinks that this is going to help him in some way, when it's not really helping.
No,
It's,
not at all.
she
Yeah, you
isn't
could
aware that how
well, she asked
shitty these
yeah,
kids
well,
are.
she's mentioning like, "Oh, yeah, last year we went to a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese,
These people didn't
and
even know what Chuck E. Cheese
and the
was.
woman didn't know what Chuck E. Cheese was," and I'm like, "Apparently you don't have a normal child," you know what I mean? Because I know when I was a little kid, Chuck E. Cheese was a mainstay for many a kid's birthday.
Yeah,
Not only my own, but just other kids.
yeah.
And it's very interesting, like you said, how out of the element she is. But this is, of course, where we get a scene where,
This is
you know,
kind of our first prominent scene where we actually hear his interaction, what
yes,
he hears from his point of view of a paranormal thing, which is was one of the scariest scenes for me when I was a kid. Was this
really,
particular for me? Yeah, I mean, he sees this balloon and it floats up to the top of the stairs, and the music. Of course, we didn't say this. The music is done by James Newton Howard, who
mm,
works with M. Night Shyamalan pretty regularly up until, I think, recent movies. I don't think he's done his last couple movies, but yeah, I mean, the music in this movie's terrifying at moments. It's got these little cues, like what a Hitchcock movie would usually have. And he goes up the stairs and to obviously go after the balloon, and when he gets to the top of the stairs, there's this like cupboard
Yeah,
and
he hears
he
voice
he
a
hears this
voice.
voice that's crying out like was it in another language? I think
No,
he was speaking in
he was
English,
speaking English. Yeah,
and he was saying how he's like, "Let me out of here, get me out of here. I'm gonna kill somebody." Like he's like just obviously angry, and he wants to whatever it is wants to get out, and of course he's just kind of frozen. And then the two dipshit kids see him, and of course go to pick on him and toss him inside.
yeah. The kids are terrible. It just shows
Yeah.
you how you know cruel kids can be.
Oh, definitely.
They
Yeah.
and they lock him in, and the kid is screaming for someone
Yeah.
to let him out, like
And
so
fi-
loud that the parents can hear it down the stairs.
yeah, yeah. And
And
and finally the mother, realizes and goes up and tries to get him out, can't get him out, and then suddenly the door unlocks on its own. And
and what
then
and what bothered me about that scene so much is like the kids are just standing there in shock.
yeah, like doing nothing.
The parents are just like staring there in shock, and I'm like, somebody get this woman the key for this door.
Yeah. And then the door opens and he falls out and he's unconscious and
Yeah, he's passed out.
passed out and so
It goes slow mo on us, and
yeah, I got slow mo on us for a second, and then we cut to the hospital where the doctor, played by M. Night Shyamalan, is that
yes,
once
yeah,
again
cameo.
another Hitchcock thing. He likes to cameo in his own movies, but they're a lot more elaborate. And M. Night likes to actually play.
Yeah,
He
he
likes to
actually
have
has
speaking
dialogue and
parts.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So he plays this doctor who's informing the mother about he's fine, telling her he's fine, but that he has these scratches and bruises that they're not really sure where they come from. So now they think maybe the mother's abusing, and they want the social worker to talk to her. And Bruce Willis is there also, and he's just kind of reacting, and it's like, that's bullshit. No, I mean, I can tell that's a loving mother, But of
right.
course, once again, Bruce Willis never interacts with anybody else in the
No,
room.
nobody really acknowledges that he's there.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if
And
he was a therapist and he was there and that doctor said something like that, you would think the therapist would be like, look, no, I've been around them. They're great.
yeah, like I've been studying them.
I've been
There's
studying.
no evidence that would dictate that the mother would do these things.
There's one little hole you could maybe say right there, but
Yeah, I have another little hole about that. It's like
sure.
Bruce Willis's character just kind of shows up at the right time in the right
Oh,
place.
he's all. I mean, and that's the
And
thing
I'm
about.
like, he can't talk on the phone. Like nobody's calling him saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
this kid's in the hospital. Your patient's in the hospital. You may want to come see
It's
him. He had an
like we
attack."
said before, you fill in the blanks. You
Yeah,
assume
yeah.
that there was a call made and then he was brought there, and it's
Right. But once you get the reveal later on, then you go back and rewatch it. You're like, how is he? How is he at the school?
well. There's
How is
also
he over here. How's he at the hospital?
yeah. How does he know to be everywhere at the right time? Sometimes,
Right.
sometimes but you can fill in the blanks. I think, and also, when you learn that he has been dead this whole time, you kind of get that. The kid says that they don't know they're dead, and
Right.
that when you're dead, I mean, I'm assuming the way we see his character show up is kind of how he lives his life. He just kind of time does not exist the same way, so he kind of shows up at the right times whenever he's needed, or whenever he needs something from Cole, which is to learn more about his problem.
Yeah, and this is the big scene in the movie. This is the scene that has been referenced and parodied and satirized, quoted many times by many people, us including.
Yes.
And it's the scene where Cole reveals to Malcolm that he can see dead people.
And Bruce Willis does such a good job in this scene acting with his eyes, because he like has this kind of like stare out in space look where he's like super baffled about what he's hearing, and he just can't wrap his mind around it. He's like, oh man, I don't think I can help this kid. This kid's got something that I can't do for him, which he says in this next scene right after, where he's writing, speaking his thoughts into his tape recorder and saying that he's probably going to need medication. He's probably going to need to go to a clinic or asylum, whatever, to maybe get help. And I can't help him,
he does. He has he's skeptic about it.
But and the thing is I think really quickly he figures out that he can't do that, because that's what he did with the other guy. He sent him to a clinic, He sent him away.
Right.
He gave up on him in a sense.
But what he does do after that is he's listening to an old recording on a tape
Yes.
recorder where he was interviewing the
Original. Yeah.
Vincent Gray when he was younger,
Yeah.
and he at one point he leaves the room for some reason, but the tape recorder is still going, and so he pumps up the volume like all the way, and he can hear that the kid starts crying. The Vincent
Yeah.
Gray kid, when he's a child, starts crying, and he can hear a voice in the background. This is some creepy stuff.
Yeah, that's
You
creepy.
hear
Yeah.
the voice in Spanish,
Yeah.
and it's just like a frightening like
Moment in the
moment.
it's
It
kind of like
felt
that white noise kind of
Yeah.
thing where you can hear things that technology can hear things that humans cannot sometimes hear with the ear.
So basically, we come both us as an audience and Bruce Willis, Malcolm comes to this revelation, or that both Vincent Gray and this young boy, I guess, had the same ability,
Yeah.
where people were appearing to him. Um, it's it's very, very interesting how those two characters are connected. There's never really an explanation how this kid got these abilities, how the Vincent Gray character got these abilities, but that's kind of not really important. It's
No,
it's
I mean,
more about, you know, what is happening with them
it's
versus how they
the
came about.
thematics are what matters more in this movie. Like I said, the communication theme, where and then for him, he can communicate with the dead and help dead people, you know, quote unquote, move on, and get their unfinished business finished,
Right,
is kind of what his purpose is. And that's something that Shyamalan does also in Unbreakable. It's about purpose, figuring out purpose, and I think that's part of what Cole needs from Malcolm, is to help him figure out what to do with this. It's not something that he can probably get rid of, but it's something he can maybe deal with, and that's what
right.
Malcolm helps him with. And yeah, I mean, he goes back to him and kind of starts to ask, now that he knows what the issue is, and that he has
Yeah.
evidence of it.
He believes him.
He can believe him, and now he can try to help him understand maybe why these dead people are coming to him, and brings up the idea that, are you sure that they're there to hurt you, or that maybe
Yeah.
they need your help?
He basically asks them, to listen to what they're saying
Instead of
versus just
running away,
running away.
listen. Yeah. Even the scary one, he's like, even the scary ones might need your help.
Right. And this is when we get to another sequence in the film where he does so. He lives in there's this kind of makeshift tent that he set up in his home that with red sheets.
It's kind of his in-home church. He goes
Yeah.
to, when he can go to church during the day, he goes to the church, but at night when he's at home, he goes in this tent when he's really scared.
And there's
It's
all
got
these
all
kind
these,
of religious figures in it, these statues
yeah.
and these little statues. And he's in there, and he of course has one of his visions. And it's of, the little girl throwing up.
Well,
And of course he gets.
I think
Is it
before that
before?
we got one that was a little bit later, but we
Is that
did.
later?
Yeah,
Okay.
because there's one scene
Back it
where
up.
there's one scene where we have this is a very important scene that comes back later, where they're having dinner and it's really cold in the house, and
Yes.
obviously the mother's upset, and it's because she thinks that he stole this bumblebee pendant that was her mother's.
Yes.
And she's upset at him for maybe apparently taking it and moving it and trying to keep it for himself. And it's not him. It's a dead person, and we don't know.
Grandmother.
It's the grandmother, but we don't know it's the grandmother
Right,
yet.
right.
And she's like, look, I didn't do it. And she doesn't, of course, understand who else it could be, because he's the only one else that lives there. And so, because she's angry, it's really cold in the house. Like, we understand that when the ghosts are angry, and when there's, like, I think when the actual people in the house are upset, it creates a cold. It's something you've seen in a lot of horror movies,
Right.
where it gets colder when the supernatural beings are angry, or when you feed the anger with your own anger. And so she gets really angry at him, tells him to leave the dinner when he doesn't admit that he moved it when he didn't. And then, the dog gets upset because the dog saw this kid that blew out his head apparently by accident. The kid goes back to his room and then runs into this kid. He's like, "Hey, I'll show you where my dad's gun is." He turns around and his back of his head's blown out. And, that's a shocking little scene there. And then
that's probably one of the glorious scenes.
It's one of the most graphic images, I think. Yeah.
For a film that doesn't have that much graphic imagery, that's one of the most graphic images in the movie. Certainly the bloodiest.
Yeah, and then the mother's like trying to get the dog. The dog's scared out of this area, like I guess like a cleanup room area. And then Cole comes to her and says, "If you're not too angry, can I stay with you in your room tonight?" And she's like, I don't hate you, and they hug and embrace, and it's a nice little tender scene there. And then after that, I know I'm probably missing something, or we might be out of order somewhat, but there is another very frightening scene where he goes to the bathroom and I think I've even done this when I was a kid where I was like scared to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Was it the scene? Is it when after he comes home from the hospital?
It might be,
His mom carries him in, puts him in bed.
Yeah, puts him to bed.
And that's when she sees like he has scratches on his back and stuff like that.
He wakes up like really early.
Yeah, he wakes up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Yeah, he wakes up really early in the morning, and that is kind of the creepy part of the morning where it's like just the sun's about to come up, and you're like, you've barely still any light in the house, and so he's like kind of like looking around like, okay, I'll run to the bathroom real quick, and then he's peeing, and then suddenly something walks by the doorway. He turns, and you get that great like he breathes you see the air because it's super cold, and then I love the shot where as he's walking towards the kitchen, it's like that first person, and it's like kind of creepy because you're with him, and then he goes to the doorway and he thinks it's his mom because she has similar hair and is wearing a robe very similar to his mom's, I think, and then she turns around and she's like some woman that apparently killed herself when her husband was abusive, and is like, "You can't hurt me anymore," like, and that was the scariest part of the movie for me.
On her wrist, basically.
Yeah.
That's a frightening moment.
That was the most frightening scene for me in the movie usually was that scene when I was a kid. And of course I didn't understand necessarily at the time that the implications of what she was, that she had killed herself. But now I'm like, damn, that's dark.
That's dark.
It's dark as fuck,
Suicide, basically. Yeah. So back all the way up to what I was talking about, where he sees the little girl in the tent. He gets
played by Misha Barton.
He's played by Misha Barton from the OC. For those of you who aren't old enough to remember what the OC was, it was kind of like a
kind of a 90210 of its time.
A teen angsty romance show from the early 2000s. I think it ran from 2003.
Came on Fox.
Yeah, I think it ran from 2003 to 2006. So
short run. Ago. And she was one of the main actresses in it, and she doesn't really do much now, but this was kind of her first role.
Right. So she's in The Little Girl Who's Obviously Dead, and when he first sees her, she's throwing up all over herself.
Yeah, it's a pretty creepy scene too.
It's pretty gross. Pretty gross. Not gonna lie to you. It's vomit. I mean, vomit's kind of gross.
And this is right after he had the talk with Malcolm about listening to the ghosts. So initially he runs out of the tent scared, and then he decides to go back. And one interesting thing that I thought was cool about, I was listening to the special features, and M. Night talked about how, this was kind of the imagery of this scene where he takes the sheet off of her is kind of breaking away that mythos of like ghosts in sheets, and how you see that imagery of a ghost with a sheet over him. And in this scene, he's taking the sheet off of the ghost is kind of cool. He's like, it finishes the scene out where he's like, "So did you want to tell me something?" And then it cuts away, and then you don't know what she told him or whatever. And now you're on a bus on your way to somewhere.
It's Cole and Malcolm on a bus, and they're going to this little girl's funeral, basically.
Yeah.
Right. And they go there, and there's all the the mourners and family, relatives, whatever are there. And then he goes upstairs to her room, and he goes under her bed, and he picks up a box, brings it down the stairs back to the memorial service they're having, and he goes up to the little girl's father, and hands him this box and says, well, first he asks, are you Kira's dad and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And he's like, she wanted you to have this. And it's a VHS tape, and he plays it. And what we find out is that the mother was poisoning the daughter to make it look as if she was sick and dying.
Yeah.
And it's really that's disturbing as
Yeah,
hell.
it's disturbing. Now, I'm not sure if it's clear. Was that their actual real mother, or was she a stepmother?
I think she was the actual mother.
Okay, I was gonna, yeah,
Read and from what I've seen, it's the actual mother.
because that's even more disturbing. If it was the stepmother, that made that in my head for some reason that was always the reality, was that she was like a second wife that was brought in, that just wanted the father for herself. So she wanted to get rid of the kids, because it's also implicated that the little one's getting sick too, and that she's trying to kill the other child.
The youngest daughter, who is also apparently sick. We hear people talking about that,
Yeah.
and and the videotape shows that she's poisoning her.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the screenplay now, and it says the mother pours,
Okay.
some into the bottle. The remainder goes into the child's soup, and she replaces the cap and puts the bottle back in the closet. And it's very interesting the way the little girl set up that camera, was like in her dollhouse, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a nanny cam, if you will. Apparently she had the self-awareness to do that because she thought something was up. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting how that happened, and how it's something that's kind of based on real life. It's a real life thing that happens. It's called Munchausen syndrome by proxy. That's
Yeah.
what the technical, I guess, term is, which it's a condition derived from Munchausen syndrome. It's a psychiatric factitious disorder wherein those affected feign disease, illness, and psychological trauma to draw attention. So basically, this woman was poisoning her child to create attention for herself, fake
Yeah.
attention. Basically, creating this fake scenario to create attention for herself, which is a really interesting
Yeah.
psychiatric disease, psychological disease. Um, and and this kind of this moment kind of not fixes um Cole's problem, but it gives him a way in which to channel his problem into a more positive thing. And he
Yeah.
sees that he has a more positive outlook on things now from a certain perspective, because I believe one of the next scenes we see is he's in the school play, or am I
Yeah.
skipping through things again?
Well, no. Yeah, I mean, after that, he
And he
leaves.
he actually
He talks with the little sister for a bit and tells her that gives her like a toy or something that the sister wanted her to have, and then you get the idea that now Cole has like you said had this experience has now changed his whole outlook, and now you know he's starring in the play. It looks like they're doing like the Sword in the Stone or something like that.
the King Arthur legend, where
The
he
King Arthur legend. He's actually
King
playing
Arthur.
Arthur. And
Yes.
the stupid douchey kid that was the actor is playing like one of the idiot, which is one of the funny moments where the kid's like, "Shut up, imbecile," or something like that. Like it tells him like "stupid village idiot" or something.
Yeah, the kid's playing Merlin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
And
go, "Silence, village idiot."
yeah. I love that. And yeah, so yeah, and then of course the fantasy he had earlier kind of comes true, where at the end of the play they pick him up and the kids are like, yay, cheering for him, and he gets to live out that kind of fantasy. And then Cole and Malcolm have kind of one more scene where they kind of say their goodbyes, and Cole's like, hey, let's pretend that we're going to meet again tomorrow, and not actually say goodbye. And they have that scene. And then the very next scene we get that scene where Cole and his mother in the car waiting in traffic. There's been an accident and they're just kind of waiting in traffic. And Cole decides now he's finally ready to tell her his secret.
Yes.
Which is that he sees dead people. And of course, the reaction you would expect kind of happens. And, she kind of is like, doesn't know what to say. He sees it in her face, and kind of what he says earlier. He's like, what are you thinking, Mom? Do you think I'm crazy? Do you, and you know,
Well, this
then
is
he
what
go.
then he goes into this whole thing about the grandmother.
Yeah, this is where
And
that grandmother Bumblebee pendant thing pays off.
right,
Where he explains that um, grandma comes and sees him, every once in a while, and then at first she kind of takes offense to it and says that that's going too far. But then when he tells her information that he couldn't have known about her when she was a little girl having this you know dance recital that she did, and the mother didn't go to it, but that she apparently did go to it. And then there's a thing where he says that she said something to her at a gravesite, and that the grandmother said every day, and that the question was like, how were you ever proud of me? And the grandmother apparently answer was every day. So it was his way of being able to convince her that he wasn't crazy. um,
right.
and honestly, that scene, rewatching it again, was actually a lot more powerful than I remember. Like
Mm,
that, getting that sense of like, if putting yourself in Cole's position where he's had to keep this secret for so long, and he couldn't even tell his own mother, who was the person he's supposed to trust the most, and now being able to tell her and for her to believe him is very powerful scene, um, and very emotional, and just I thought it was one of the best scenes in the movie. So acting wise, especially.
yeah, it was just fantastically well done by both Haley Joel Osment and Toni Collette. Haley Joel Osment, I would say, in this film in general, I think is really great acting.
It's one of the best child performances, I'd
It
say.
definitely is. He is able to give a lot of sincere, emotional, moments that I think really come across as genuine for someone in his position. And I think it's really punctuated by this scene. And this scene being so important to the overall plot, to the overall character journey. Because as we've seen in this film, that it's not only the character journey of Haley Joel Osment's Cole, but also in Bruce Willis's Malcolm, where they're both, like you said
Well,
earlier,
he's got.
seeking out connection to something that they haven't been able to connect to.
Yeah, I mean, and he, now that he's made he's the thing is as M. Night Shyamalan, he says about this movie, he's like, we could have ended the movie right here, and it would have
They
been
could have.
it could have ended it right here, but you we finished the arc of Cole in this scene, and now we needed to finish the arc of Malcolm by revealing the big secret, which is that he needed to he needed to find out what his place was and accept his place, which is that he's not here anymore, that he's
Right.
not alive anymore, and that he can now move on now that he's helped Cole. His unfinished business is now
Yeah, and
complete.
Cole gave him advice in speaking in trying to connect and talk with his wife, talk to her when she's sleeping.
Yeah. Which let me ask you this question.
Right.
Do you think Cole knew that he was dead for
Yes.
most of this movie?
The whole movie.
Do you think he knew the whole movie?
Yeah, I do.
Really? When do you think, like, what moment do you think that he.
It goes back to the bit of dialogue I mentioned earlier at the end of their first meeting. The next
Uh-huh.
time I see you, I won't be scared.
Uh-huh.
And
So if that's the case, then why couldn't if he wasn't scared
why
of
didn't he tell him?
Well, what I'm saying is why, if he saw him as a dead person when he first met him,
Right.
why wasn't he scared then, when he's scared of every other one before? You know what I'm saying?
That's a good question. I think that first meeting, set things up for him not to be scared.
Yeah.
I think it made him be able to communicate with the Bruce Willis character and not be frightened, because as we've seen, his other interactions with the other ghosts, if you
Yeah.
will, are shockingly frightening. People yelling, people screaming, blood, gore, vomit, stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like, that's frightening.
Because
If a
if
ghost came up to me right now, just started having a conversation, and I knew it was a ghost, would I be kind of scared in the moment? Probably, but considering that Cole sees ghosts all the time and is regularly sees ghosts, this was probably something completely different for him. You know what
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean?
it's just interesting to kind of think about, like, if he knew that he was dead the whole time, um, and that he was letting this ghost, interact with him regularly and talk with him regularly. Why, in a sense, he was doing the thing that he would eventually um, accept at the end of this movie, which is to listen to the ghosts.
Right.
He's already listening to Malcolm the whole movie.
He is.
So that's kind of an interesting thing. Like, part of me wants to think that it wasn't an initial thing, um, or that he didn't even really know until the end, maybe, or closer to the end. I don't know. It's hard. It's a thing to think about. I don't know. I don't know if there's a actual answer to that question, or if we're
And
supposed to,
another thing that I'm just thinking of in my head is that he never mentions Malcolm to anyone else, not even his
sure.
mom.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot. I mean, you're probably right, but there's just some questions to me that makes me think that maybe it's possible that he doesn't know initially. But there is one little thing, I think, that a subtle acting thing that Bruce Willis does also that indicates him being a ghost, is that when there's a couple times where he's walking around and he's holding his side where he got shot.
Mm.
In a couple scenes. It's very subtle. They don't focus on it in the frame but it's really quick. And he's like holding his side and he's walking, and it's where he got shot. And you're like,
Right.
why is
Yeah.
he doing that? Like,
Yeah.
what? Like,
He got shot in his stomach, and the bullet went through
yeah,
his
it's one of
back.
the
So
things when you watch it
on his
again, you're
back.
like, oh, that's a reference to his injury,
Right.
where he got shot.
There's
But
there's something else that I read where when Cole reveals that he can see dead people, the camera cuts right away to Bruce Willis's face,
yeah, it does. Yeah.
indicating that he is dead. But
Well, yeah, I mean,
also
like,
it
yeah,
works as a shot reaction shot. You know what I mean?
yeah, I
So it
mean,
works both
I
ways.
think when, like I said, when you watch it again, it becomes
Right.
it feels like it becomes super obvious what they're that the movie's trying to tell you something. But I mean, on the first watch, I don't think people were assuming that when you went. I'm sure, but I mean, like I said, no internet really at that time. People are
No,
not thinking about that.
we had dial up.
Yeah,
That terrible cringeworthy sound.
yeah, but like, people were not theory. You didn't have a place to really talk about these theories in depth. I mean,
Yeah,
and it's just
you didn't have
movies were not advertised the way they were
yeah,
now.
you didn't have social media and
Yeah.
stuff like that, like
So
large forums.
there was no theories to be able to try to dissect this movie before it even came out.
Right.
You didn't know what to expect with this movie, and nobody was looking for that. And I think that that's why it was such a big surprise for people for their first viewing. And yeah, I mean, like I said, at the end here, he has to accept when he finds out himself that he's dead, when, she's got his wedding ring in her hand, and she
Yeah.
drops it.
And it
And
falls, and it sounds like the one ring hitting the floor, and
yeah,
all the
yeah.
rings, and it rolls, and it's like
And then he realizes that the ring isn't on his own finger, and he's
what's
like,
interesting is there's a scene early on in the film where she's selling a ring to an engaged couple, and she has
yeah,
kind of this very romantic, you know, kind of idea of what the ring symbolizes and stuff like that.
yeah,
I think that, a little bit of the person who wears the ring goes into the ring and stuff like that. And it's
yeah,
very much, literally comes full circle. Haha, a ring being a circle.
yeah, yeah,
And later on, where like she's holding the ring, she's still holding on to him. You know what I mean? It's very much the exact opposite of what we assumed her feelings were towards him, where, we were, this fake narrative that we had was like they're a married couple with the distance between the two, where it's the actual opposite, where she's literally probably thinking about him all the time.
yeah,
She's still very much in mourning. There's even one scene in the film where she's like in bed and she's like holding tissues, and and rewatching the movie, it's like that's a clear indication that she was probably crying. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And so when the ring drops and he looks at his fingers, he realizes he's not wearing it, and he
It's
he
the
recalls
epiphany moment
it's the
in it, and
epiphany. He
everything
recalls
floods into him. Everything that didn't make sense for him as like the times where he would go to the basement and for some reason the basement would be locked.
Right.
It all flooded into his mind, and now that it made sense, because that door was locked because he didn't, it was locked because all his stuff was put down there and locked away because she didn't want to have to see it anymore.
Right.
And
And also, he recalls what Cole said, where there are dead people who don't even know they're dead.
yeah, don't know they're dead. And also, where when he tells him that he could talk to her in her sleep, and that's when she'll have to listen. She won't even know she's listening. She'll have to listen.
Right.
He actually does it himself earlier in the movie, where he does it with his mom. His mom's having a bad dream. He kind of comes to her and comforts her in her sleep, and she calms down.
Yes.
So there's a lot of parallels there, and that's why I don't think it's so clear that that he knows that Bruce Willis is dead necessarily, because he's giving him advice for somebody that, as a living person, that did himself. To give that same advice to a ghost, I don't know if that's exactly I don't know if that makes it a clear indication. I don't know, but
I have no idea what the level of what the parameters are with
yeah, it's
you know what I
an
mean? Like,
interesting, yeah.
what goes for ghosts, that doesn't go for humans.
I don't know. I don't know.
Living people thing.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, because ghosts. I've talked to ghosts all the time. I know how they are, and I'm telling you, they wouldn't take that advice. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, it really just comes all together at the end, and he tells basically when he accepts it and tells her that he loves her and that he has to go. He thinks he can go now because now that he's helped Cole, he can move on and she can move on. Because him being there is not only was not only him trying to finish this unfinished business, it was also hurting her because his presence being there was causing her to have more grief. And yeah, I mean, now they can all move on.
And that's how the movie ends.
Yeah. Yep. That's The Sixth Sense, people.
Right.
So yeah, anybody that's hopefully maybe this was your first time seeing the movie, we'd love to hear your thoughts for the first time you've seen it, and then listen to us talk about it and spiel about it for an hour and a half, and yeah, tell us your thoughts. Were you surprised by the ending? If this is your fifth or sixth time seeing the movie, tell us, does it still hold up for you? It still holds up for me. I think it's a really well done movie, a very tight movie. It's one of my favorite thrillers. And maybe I'm just biased because I grew up with it. I don't know, but I really enjoy the movie still. Did you still really enjoy the movie watching it again for the second time?
I did. I probably liked it even more.
Good. Yeah.
I liked it even more now. And we do want to mention that it was a critical and box office success. It launched M. Night Shyamalan's career, like we said earlier. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Haley Joel Osment, Best Actress in a Supporting Role, Toni Collette, like we said, Best Director, M. Night Shyamalan, Best Editing, and Best Screenplay written directly for the screen. So Best Original Screenplay. It's very interesting that a film like this would be that beloved by the Academy.
Yeah, and especially, and this was a time when it was only 5 nominations.
Yeah, like it was super, I guess you could say, exclusive, more exclusive than it is now. And yeah, it was nominated amongst some.
I think this was the year that American Beauty won.
It is the year that American Beauty.
I think Insider got nominated also, maybe. It was a pretty solid year. I think, if I remember correctly. I probably would have picked The Insider over American Beauty. That's just me, but because I'm not a huge fan of American Beauty, I think it's okay. It's just
this is the year that American Beauty won. But what else was nominated? The Insider, Green Mile.
I would have picked The Green Mile.
Cider House Rules.
In The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, those are.
Yeah, and it's like it kind of reminds you of like back when The Exorcist got nominated. It's kind of the last like you said, it's horror or thriller. I mean, I guess Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, would be the one before that one that kind of fits the mold. But nowadays, you don't see any movies of this ilk getting nominated for Best Picture, really. I
Not
mean,
typically. I mean, last year we did get The Shape of Water.
we did Get Out recently,
Yeah, Get Out was also last year
you
as
know,
but
but
Shape of Water is kind of the closest
well, Shape
because
of Water
it's
kind of
not a
falls
horror
more into the
horror
fantasy
film.
element than anything.
It's like horror, fantasy, romance. It's all of those into one, but we never really got genre films like that typically don't
Yeah,
get a lot of love.
don't get a lot of attention. Yeah, it's usually the period pieces, the biographies,
Yeah, drama.
things like that that always get the attention. And like you said, at a time where there was only 5 nominations, for this to get nominated was pretty big deal. I think, I just wish we would get a lot. I mean, there has definitely been changes in the nominations more recently, with things like Black Panther and Bohemian Rhapsody getting nominated. So we're definitely going back into popular culture a little bit more for these nominations. But I think when I found out that this movie was nominated for Best Picture, it surprised me. I mean, I love the movie, but to get nominated for Best Picture, that's a big deal. Yeah, that's going to be it for our discussion of The Sixth Sense. Hope we didn't babble on too much. I think we maybe did a little bit, we talked about a lot of stuff, but I'm Stephen Billings. You can find me Facebook, Instagram, showing off all the stuff I buy. Where can we find you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Cabzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions.
And you can find the audio for this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Podbean. And that'll be it for this episode. Thanks for listening. And hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.